Okay, let's try to make this quick. This is Unit 2 practice test, Part 1, and then we'll address Part 2. I want to make this quick, so at any time, if it feels like it's moving too quickly, go ahead and pause the video, attempt the problem yourself, and then hit play again, and then self-assess as we go, okay? So this first part, all of this has to address target 2A, being able to define things in terms of the building blocks of geometry, point, line, and plane. These are diagrams of terms that you should already know. So pay attention to the question mark. This is pointing to two lines, not line segments, not rays, but the two lines. You know that 90 degrees is the same as a right angle, and where right angles define lines as being perpendicular. So your answer for A would be perpendicular lines. For B, these arrows are pointing to two angles. The angles sit on a same line. They share a side. So while you might think these are supplementary, it's true they are supplementary angles, but more precisely, they are a linear pair. C points to an angle that we know must be obtuse because we can place a sheet of paper there and know it's greater than 90 degrees. Looking at D, the arrows point to two angles that are on opposite sides of each other. They share the same lines as sides. And by definition, these are vertical angles. This is one of the two angle relationships that exist when angles share a vertex. The other relationship is a linear pair. And we saw that with B. These two angles share a vertex on the same line, they're adjacent, and D, vertical angles share a vertex. E points this symbol here, which represents a right angle. So you would write a right angle. F, the arrows point to these two angles. These two angles have symbols that indicate that they are congruent. The answer for F is congruent angles. For G, the arrows point to congruent sides. Okay, but these note are segments. And so more precisely, we have congruent segments. H points to the angle here, PQR. Angle PQR is being bisected by this ray. So this is a bisected angle. And finally, I pointed to two angles that you know add up to 90 degrees because the symbol for a right angle is there. So this is a diagram of complementary angles. Complementary, not complementary. Number 2 asks you to do some reasoning here. If measure of angle P is 13 degrees and the measure of angle Q is 77 degrees, the sum of those is 180. It also says that angle Q and angle R are complementary. You can reason then that because 180 degrees sum indicates complementary and both angles R and P are complementary with angle Q, then they must be congruent, or you can say that their measures are equal. Remember that if you're going to use the measure symbol, you need to use equals. If you're saying that a shape is congruent to another, you're not using the symbol for measurement. So congruence between shapes, equal between measures. For number 11, you need to indicate that line 1 is parallel to line 2, so they're going to have the same number of arrows to indicate they're parallel. And you need to state that line 2 is perpendicular to line 3 with this symbol here. Now you notice that line 3 looks like it's perpendicular to line 1, or that it intersects it. That might be the case, that might not. But because it doesn't state it in this sentence here, we are not going to put the right angle in that corner. Now you could also have the right angle symbol above here, there, just as long as it's representing this perpendicular, and we can have it on the other side as well. The orientation of these lines does not matter. What matters is that you have both these pieces of information showing up in the diagram. It doesn't matter what the orientation is, it just has to be accurate. This statement, PQ, line segment PQ is perpendicular to ray PR. You're going to put an endpoint at P and Q. It's going to be a segment. And then ray P has an endpoint at P and goes through R. Be careful with these arrows, just as in number 11. You want to include all the arrows where they're appropriate and not include them where they don't indicate a ray or line. So this is a segment, these are lines, this is a ray through R, and again, perpendicular is indicated by that right angle. We're going to skip 13. This was a little bit more difficult for most students. The problems on the test are not going to be this difficult. I will note, if you've tried it, it shares a vertex. These two angles share a vertex at A, and they're not going to necessarily be vertical, but you are able in some way to connect the distance from C to X is the same as the distance from B to C. Again, there won't be any problem on the test that it's like this. You'll see questions like 11 and 12. More straightforward.